Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jayam Vishwabhad Brahmasa Parivrajagacharya Astodharasata Shri Shri Maharaj His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Ananda Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Prem Siko Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasati Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Nitai Gaur Premanandi, all glories to assembled devotees, all glories to assembled devotees, all glories to assembled devotees, all glories to Shri Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. So, Hare Krishna everyone, welcome to Srimad Bhagavatam. Discussion today, we'll be reading from Canto 3, Chapter 25, Text 20. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Prasangam ajaram pasham Atmana kavayo vidhu Seva sadushu krito Mokshadvaram apavritam Prasangam ajaram pasham Atmana kavayo vidu Saiva sadushu krito Mokshadvaram apavritam Prasangam ajaram pasham
Prasangam ajaram prasham Atmana kavayo Saeva sadhushu krito Moksha dwaram apavritam Prasangam ajaram bhasham Atmana kavayo vidu Saeva sadhushu krito Moksha dwaram apavritam
Prasangam ajaram bhasham Atmana kavayo vidu Saiva sadhushu krito Moksha dwaram apavritam
Prasangam ajaram pasham Atmana kavayo viduhu Saeva sarushu krito Moksha dvaram apavritam
Prasangam ajaram pasham Atmana kavayo viduhu Saiva sadhushu krito Moksha dwaram apavritam
Prasangam ajaram pasam Atmana kavayo vidhu Saeva sadhu sukrito Moksha dwaram apavritam
Sangam, attachment. Ajaram, strong. Pasham, entanglement. Atmana, of the soul. Kavayaha, learned men. Vidu, know. Saeva, that same. Sadhushu, to the devotees. Krita, applied. Mokshadvaram, the door of liberation. Apavritam, opened. Translation, purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Every learned man knows very well that attachment for the material is the greatest entanglement of the spirit soul, but that same attachment, when applied to the self-realized devotees, opens the door of liberation. Purport. Here it is clearly stated that attachment for one thing is the cause of bondage in conditioned life. And the same attachment, when applied to something else, opens the door of liberation. Attachment cannot be killed. It has simply to be transferred. Attachment for material things is called material consciousness, and attachment for Krishna or his devotee is called Krishna consciousness. Consciousness, therefore, is the platform of attachment. It is clearly stated here that when we simply purify the consciousness from material consciousness to Krishna consciousness, we attain liberation. Despite the statement that one should give up attachment, desireless is not possible for a living entity. A living entity by constitution has the propensity to be attached to something. We see that if someone has no object of attachment, if he has no children, then he transfers his attachment to cats and dogs. This indicates that the propensity for attachment cannot be stopped, it must be utilized for the best purpose. Our attachment for material things perpetuates our conditional state, but the same attachment, when transferred to the Supreme Personality of Godhead or his devotee, is the source of liberation. Here it is recommended that attachment should be transferred to the self-realized devotees, the sadhus. And who is a sadhu? A sadhu is not just an ordinary man with a saffron robe or long beard. A sadhu is described in the Bhagavad Gita as one who unflinchingly engages in devotional service. Even though one is found to be not following the strict rules and regulations of devotional service, if one simply has unflinching faith in Krishna, the Supreme Person, he is understood to be a sadhu. Sadhu eva samantavya. A sadhu is a strict follower of devotional service. It is recommended here that if one at all wants to realize Brahman or spiritual perfection, his attachment should be transferred to the sadhu or devotee. Lord Chaitanya also confirmed this. Lava matra sadhu sangha sarvasiddhi hoy. Simply by a moment's association with the sadhu, one can attain perfection. Mahatma is a synonym of sadhu. It is said that service to a Mahatma or elevated devotee of the Lord is Dwara Mahur Vimukte, the royal road of liberation. Mahatsevam Dwara Mahur Vimuktestamo Dwaram Yoshita Sangi Sangam. Rendering service to the materialists has the opposite effect. If anyone offers service to a gross materialist or person engaged only in sense enjoyment, then by association with such a person the door to hell is opened. The same principle is confirmed here. Attachment to a devotee is attachment to the service of the Lord. Because if one associates with the sadhu, the result will be that the sadhu will teach him how to become a devotee, a worshipper and sincere servitor of the Lord. These are the gifts of a sadhu. If we want to associate with the sadhu, we cannot expect him to give us instructions on how to improve our material condition, but he will give us instructions on how to cut the knot of contamination of material attraction and how to elevate ourselves in devotional service. That is the result of associating with the sadhu. Kapila Muni first of all instructs that the path of liberation begins such association. Om Jnanatimidandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chaksurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Vandeyam Shri Guru Shri Utapata Kamalang Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunatanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitangscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindubhya Evacha Patitanan pavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo namo namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Prasangam ajaram pasham atmanao kavayo vidu saeva sadushu krito mokshadvaram apavritam. Every learned man knows very well that attachment for the material is the greatest entanglement of the spirit soul, but that same attachment, when applied to the self-realized devotees, opens the door of liberation. Haribo. So, Srila Prabhupada emphasizes again and again this point, as do all of our scriptures and the Acharyas. We cannot avoid this point. Cannot do everything except this and expect to get positive result. The Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu explains the procedure of devotional service, and we start with Shraddha. At Shraddha, everyone has Shraddha, but the question is, what do we have Shraddha in? Everyone has faith. So some people have faith in, we generally have faith what we're taught, what we're raised with. As a child, we're very impressionable. So based on different samskars, we have some kind of faith. But when one develops faith in God, then we can say this is Shraddha. And the next step is Sadhu Sangha. So this becomes a very essential step. In order to actually traverse the spiritual path, one has to have Sadhu Sangha. We cannot find a case where someone achieves bhakti or devotional life, devotional perfection without association. There's always some connection there. So, therefore, thinking we can just practice on our own, or if some religions stress that you don't need anyone, you can just do it yourself, you can just commune directly with God. This is not supported by Srimad Bhagavatam. Krishna is there in the heart, but it requires the devotee to, as it says here, open the door of liberation. We need an example. We needed someone to kindle that fire within us. And we can see the point mentioned, most emphasized here is about attachment, that attachment is not the problem. We all have attachments, but the question is, what are we attached to? And how can we transfer that attachment to the devotees and to the Lord? Prabhupada says attachment for material things is called material consciousness. And attachment for Krishna or his devotee is called Krishna consciousness. Consciousness, therefore, is the platform of attachment. When we simply purify the consciousness, we attain liberation. Every living entity has the propensity to be attached to something. So attachment is not the problem. It's not that we have to become, Prabhupada says, desirelessness and just root out desire. But whatever attachment, how can we transfer that? And Prabhupada would emphasize that Krishna consciousness, we can engage everything. We can actually utilize everything in Krishna's service. This whole universe is meant for Krishna's service. So why are certain things that we get attached to taking us away from Krishna? Other things could bring us towards Krishna. It depends how we're using them. The same things which can be a great obstacle, a great trap, fall down, the same things can actually be the means of service if we use them correctly. So therefore, at our stage, we are trying to dovetail our propensities, dovetail attachments in the service of Krishna. We cannot immediately jump to a platform where we have no material attachments, but engage our nature in Krishna's service. Then it becomes purified. And Krishna talks a lot about our nature in the Bhagavad Gita, that you cannot artificially adopt someone else's nature. You have your nature. We have to engage our nature in Krishna's service. And by doing that, that very nature is the means by which we serve the Lord. So if we think about things that we're attached to, what if we dig down, what is it that conditioned souls are really attached to? Anyone have any ideas? Yeah. Anyway, Magadharpu says control. What else? Enjoyment. But in how? What is that? How does that look like? Any thoughts, Prabhuji?
Okay, Maharaj. We can't hear. Ready?
Yeah, I'd like to address the point you made a little earlier about the attachment to the devotee. There's a nice verse. Can you turn to that verse? That we find in Bhagavatam, and he says, go up a little bit. It said to, speaking to King Rahugana, Rahuganat tapasa yati chejaya nirvapanad grihadva chandasa naiva jalagni swarar vinamahat pada rajobhishekam. O King Rahugana, the perfectional stage of devotional service, or the Paramahansa stage of life, cannot be attained unless one is blessed by the dust of the feet of great devotees. It is never attained by tapasya, austerity, the Vedic worshipping process, or this means or acceptance of the renounced order of life, or the discharge of the duties of householder life, or the chanting of the Vedic hymns, or the performance of penances in the hot sun, or within cold water, or before the blazing fire. So, this means that, as you pointed out, no other method will be able to bring us to the perfectional stage except taking the dust of the feet. The other things may be helpful along the path, but without that, the dust of the lotus feet of the pure devotees, then we'll still be bereft. We won't make it. And another point, you mentioned the term dovetailing, and some people might be familiar with that. Some people may not. So, for those who are not, dovetail. The tail of a dove is intertwined, if you look at it. And also, that term was, I think, borrowed by the in carpentry. They make things interlocking the wood so that it stays together. So in our usage, to be dovetailed in devotional service means to be completely entwined, totally absorbed, nothing else but devotional service. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Maharaj. There's a verse in the 5th canto, actually quoted this verse well from.
There's one attachment mentioned here. Pungsastriya mituni bhavametam tayormito hridaya granti mahu togriya kshetra sutapta vitar janasya moho yamaham mameti. In terms of attachment, what is it that we're most attached to? When we boil it down, the Bhagavatam says the attraction between male and female is the basic principle of material existence. On the basis of this misconception, which ties together the hearts of the male and female, one becomes attracted to his body, home, property, children, relatives, and wealth. In this way, one increases life's illusions and thinks in terms of I and mine. So, it's not wrong to think about I and mine, but it has to be in relation to Krishna. And when we become attached materially, that I and mine is projected into things of this world, our false identity, that I am this body, and the things in this connected to this body are mine. So that concept of I and mine is very degrading for the soul. Just had a different thing I was thinking of, but Jai Shri Gaurnitai ki Jai. So the idea is to engage everything, this Dridhavrata, to be fully engaged. Mamcha yo vyabhicharena bhakti yogena, as Maharaj was saying, to be fully engaged in devotional service. This is the means of transferring that attachment. And then we can perceive that everything is Krishna's energy. How can you get attached? It's just also mentioned in the Bhagavatam that this material nature is one of Krishna's energies, one of his Shaktis. So if you saw God, with something, would you try to steal it from him? Would you try to take it for your own enjoyment? So this material nature is Krishna's energy. And living entities, as you said, for control, we're trying to exploit it. We're trying to exploit the Lord's energy. It's sometimes mentioned as Lakshmi. The goddess of fortune expands into so many different ways, including the material energy. So we're trying to enjoy Lakshmi, we could say, the material energy. It's Krishna's energy, it belongs to him, it's meant for his service. Therefore, Prabhupada had a big vision how to change the entire world simply by engaging everything back in Krishna's service. It's spiritual, it's Krishna's energy. He uses the phrase originally spiritual. But because we're trying to exploit it, now it is degrading us. That same energy, if we just learn how to engage it in the Lord's service, then Prabhupada said the whole world can become Vaikuntha. Imagine everything. Imagine this whole city being completely engaged in Krishna's service. A Krishna village. Krishna city. KC. Yeah, just imagine what that would be. All the vehicles, all the buildings, all the people. It's Vaikuntha. So that's proper. Prabhupada had that vision. That's the potential. And then imagine a whole world like that, a whole Krishna planet. This is the planet where everything is engaged in Krishna's service. Imagine you're flying around the universe, and then they see out the window, oh, that's the Krishna planet. That's where everything is. Then it becomes the spiritual world. The spiritual world manifests. Because that's the difference. Here we're using things, we're trying to exploit it. And why do we have this need to do that? We don't feel that satisfaction in our relationship with Krishna. So if we're not feeling that, then we have to look outside of ourselves and see whatever we can find to try to get some type of bliss, some semblance or reflection of Ananda. That true Ananda can only be had in the Lord's association. And especially this chapter will go on to describe the qualities of the sadhu and the characteristics. Text 23, engaged constantly in chanting and hearing about me, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The sadhus do not suffer from material miseries because they're always filled with thoughts of my pastimes and activities. So that is the nectar for which we're always anxious. It's not the material energy, the modes, the material objects, different material ingredients or elements. That is not the nectar for which we're always anxious. The nectar for which we're always anxious is to hear and be filled with thoughts of the Lord's pastimes and activities. This is the supreme relishable subject. This Srimad Bhagavatam is the Amala Purana. It's meant for the Paramahamsas. Right? What's the third verse of Srimad Bhagavatam? The third verse, not line. Does anyone know? Okay, well we know the first series of verses. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Janmadasya yata nayadi taritas chartesh abhigyaswarat. Tejo Brahmayuda Shiraya. So we have that. I'm curious if that is considered as one verse or it's a number of verses. Let me just check. Yeah, that's text 1. That's only the first text. Then text 2, kicking out all materially motivated religion. And now you have text 3. Yeah, can we give the mic? You can read the translation.
Srimad Bhagavatam. O expert and thoughtful men, relish Srimad Bhagavatam, the mature fruit of the desire tree of Vedic literatures. It emanated from the lips of Sri Shukadeva Goswami. Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful, although its nectarian juice was already relishable for all, including liberated souls.
Including liberated souls. So I was hearing recently this discussion of the Atmarama verse, and the unique characteristic is that even liberated souls become attracted to these descriptions. So they are definitely not material. Pibata Bhagavatam. Pibata is to relish. Sometimes we say drink. Drink this Bhagavatam, Rasam Alayam, until liberation. Muhur aho rasika bhuvi bhavakaha. Always. So the intelligent, expert, and thoughtful people, they get their rasa from these descriptions of the Lord. It's like a nectarian river or waterfall of Amrita, because our soul is meant to live in that reality. And it's like hearing about your home. You know, if you're far away from home, then sometime you're a long traveler, you're going on so many trips and voyages. Imagine I just want to go home. So hearing about the spiritual world, that's actually our home. We're in this strange land. We're just travelers here in the hotel. But we get so attached, we build our little empire. Then it's our little cocoon, right? It's described like the cocoon that we build a nest and then we get caught up in it. We can learn from nature. The devotees, they take lessons from anywhere. So anyhow, this is their method. By engaging in this practice of hearing and chanting the Lord's glories, then they don't suffer the pangs of material miseries. Their minds are always absorbed. And therefore the sadhu is the carrier of that. The sadhu is the one who's living that and bringing that into the material world. Therefore attachment to the sadhu becomes the means to become free. Fortunately, the sadhus, they speak. They're not silent. They speak, they glorify the Lord. They are, as we say, the living Bhagavad. There's two kinds of Bhagavad, the person and the book. So the person Bhagavad, the living, the walking Bhagavad, they're everywhere they go broadcasting these glories, trying to recruit, enlighten all the conditioned souls. And this is the real Mahatma or Sadhu. So that attachment that we have for material things, we have to understand that will never satisfy me. I'm not built for that, but I need that higher taste that will only come from this Srinvatam Svakata Krishna. Punya Stravana Kirtana, Hridyantostya Bhajani, Vidunoti Sudritatam, the Krishna Kata, Krishna Nam. This is confirmed by Lord Chaitanya, Lava Matra Sadhu Sangha Sarva Siddhi Hoy. So we have many examples in the Shastra how just by meeting a sadhu, their life was transformed. Just that fraction of a second here, it means 1/11th of a second. Just by brushing into a pure devotee, their life is completely successful. I'm thinking, I was recently completing study of the Bhakti Vaibhav, and in the 4th canto, and so many examples are there. Narada Muni, he is the sadhu who's just going around giving his association, delivering people all over the universe. So in the 4th canto, we have examples of King Prachinabarhi. The story is given to deliver this king who was so absorbed in materialism, and just by that association with Narada, he completely came out of illusion. Similarly, Dhruva Maharaj, Dhruva had a desire, but he didn't know how to fulfill it. And Narada Muni came, just by that association, he instructed him. He told him how to actually. Dhruva said, I want a kingdom greater than my father, greater than my father's father. And Krishna gave him the pole star, the spiritual planet in this material world. And that was due to his following the instructions of Narada Muni. Also the Prachetas, we know their story. They actually got the darshan of the Lord, then they got instructed by Lord Shiva, but then they became kind of engaged in activities of progeny, and they became, in their words, they became forgetful. So again, Narada Muni came and delivers transcendental knowledge to them. And coming up, we have, actually, I'll read this verse here from the 4th canto, 29th chapter. One who is always hearing the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is always engaged in the culture of Krishna consciousness, and in hearing the Lord's activities, very soon becomes eligible to see the Supreme Personality of Godhead face to face. In the place where pure devotees live, following the rules and regulations, and thus purely conscious and engaged with great eagerness in hearing and chanting the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, in that place, if one gets a chance to hear their constant flow of nectar, which is exactly like the waves of a river, one will forget the necessities of life, namely hunger and thirst, and become immune to all kinds of fear, lamentation, and illusion. That's the right question to ask. Okay, you got it? Yeah, I'll read this again. My dear king, in the place where pure devotees live, following the rules and regulations, thus purely conscious and engaged with great eagerness in hearing and chanting the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In that place, if one gets a chance to hear their constant flow of nectar, which is exactly like the waves of a river, one will forget the necessities of life, namely hunger and thirst, and become immune to all kinds of fear, lamentation, and illusion. So we need to be absorbed in hearing more and more. Our process is kirtaniya sadahari, always hearing. What is the restriction? Today we have so much, even digital means that we can hear. Either we'd be hearing our mind, or we could be hearing some nectarian waves of the river of Krishna Kata. So we should be absorbed in that hearing. If we're doing service, we can be hearing. Whatever we're doing, we have the opportunity. We don't want to just hear our mind all day long. That's quite traumatic. So there's so many descriptions, classes, audiobooks, recordings. The books, we can hear different books that have been recorded. That way we could be absorbed in this river. And it says here, then we forget, oh, I forgot I didn't eat today. I forgot to drink today. Plus, you get immune to all kinds of fear. I think we all have some fear. Is anyone free from fear? We have some deep lurking monsters of fear. But why should we be afraid? If we're hearing Krishna's pastimes, then we're not afraid. Then we are absorbed. We're afraid because we're not hearing the pastimes. And lamentation, immune of lamentation. What is there to lament? We have access to the beautiful spiritual world and descriptions. And illusion, immune to illusion. And text 41, because the conditioned soul is always disturbed by the bodily necessities such as hunger and thirst, he has very little time to cultivate attachment to hearing the nectarian words of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So we should not put things in the way of hearing. That's our main process, hearing process. I mean, hearing and chanting, they go together. Now, we usually wrap up at 8:30. Okay, so we've gone a little bit over time. We'll see if there's any question or comments.
My friend who's on the Zoom wanted me to ask a question for him.
Let's do it.
The title of today's chapter is The Glories of Devotional Service. How do you explain that devotional service is glorious?
Well, I think we tried to explain that in the class. What is glorious? We might have some idea or conception of something glorious. It's really great. But yeah, it would be interesting to see actually how that's translated. Glory. Okay.
I would say that devotional service is glorious because everything about it is praiseworthy. Even the past, the present, the future. If one performs devotional service, even if he performed misdeeds in the past, they get wiped clean. So that takes care of that. That's glorious. And then the activity now that he's performing devotional service, that's also glorious because it's happy, it's joyful to perform. Sukham kartamavayam. Just by hearing and engaging in devotional service, it's blissful. It's not like you have to wait until you die. It's not that I have to wait till I die. And then, I didn't like that when I was young. They would say, go to church or go to the temple or something. And then when you die, you get to go to heaven. What about now? I want pleasure now. So devotional service is blissful now. It's better than any other pleasure. Did you see anyone else dancing around the streets for hours, not getting paid? No, you don't see that. So that means it must be blissful. And glorious for the future, because if one engages in devotional service, the future is very bright. There's nothing to worry about. There's no death, there's no old age, there's no disease, there's no fear, all the things that were mentioned there. That's glorious for the future, It's glorious for now and it's glorious in the past. That's one thought. Thank you.
Yeah, we all have a conception of what is glorious. Bhakti is the supreme, Param Tattva, the highest truth is devotion to Krishna. That's okay for you, friends. Anyone else? So, I wanted to finish with one little thing, if I can, because I noticed on our schedule tomorrow is the day we honor Ramananda Roy with his appearance day. Sorry? Today. Oh, it's today, disappearance day? Oh, thank Krishna. Today happens to be the disappearance day of Sri Ramananda Roy. So we should always glorify Ramananda Roy. It's a great Bhagavad, a great Thakur, a great soul, always relishing that ocean. So we're describing it, he's tasting it, and actually Mahaprabhu is tasting it from him. Krishna comes as Mahaprabhu to taste that. How is the devotion glorious? Let me find out. And then he gets to absorb. He orchestrates in such a way that he wants to hear. It's so nectarian that God himself comes to hear glories of devotional service. So we're talking about the importance of meeting a saint. Mahaprabhu, he orchestrates a beautiful pastime where he actually meets his dear devotee Ramananda Roy. But very briefly, I'll share a few lines of this meeting, which is remarkable. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu embraced Ramananda Roy very firmly. This is CC Madhya chapter 8, text 22. Indeed, both master and servant almost lost consciousness due to ecstatic love. Their natural love for each other was awakened in them both, and they embraced and fell to the ground. So they're realizing, because now they're in the Gaur Lila, this is Krishna and his dear associates, Ramananda Roy is described as Vishaka, some say Lalita. So now this mutual love is awakened. Again, they fall to the ground when they embraced each other, ecstatic symptoms, paralysis, perspiration, tears, shivering, paleness, standing up of the bodily hairs appeared. The word Krishna came from their mouths falteringly. So this is the meeting of the sadhu. I mean, was himself showing example in the highest sense, that meeting just one moment, how much spiritual emotion was generated from that. And later on, we will see, they will start this discussion of Krishna Kata. And Mahaprabhu will become so intoxicated, he'll have to stop and say, hold on, this is too much. So we honor Ramananda Roy today. There's this whole section, Chaitanya Charitamrita, the Ramananda Roy Samvad, talks between Lord Chaitanya and Ramananda Roy, very important. And actually Prabhupada wrote a book called Ramananda Roy Samvad. So there is some writings by Prabhupada on this beautiful pastime. And today's a great day to dive into it. Sri Ramananda Roy ki jai,
Jai.
Sri Mahaprabhu ki jai, Sri Bhagavad ki jai, Go Premanandi.
Oh.